you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Good morning, and welcome to another edition of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. The contact number is 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. If you elect to use that way, bear in mind that more than likely your Gmail will not be read today. Depends on how it is forwarded up to me, but it will not be read today, and I will try to read it sometime before it is automatically deleted. I don't want that to happen, but the calls come first, so chances are it's not going to be read in what you might consider a timely manner. But if I still have it up on the board, it will be addressed, and then I will give you the date and time. Bear in mind, by the way, that when you order your materials from ProduceJustice.com, particularly the books, I understand that there is a tremendous delay or backlog in the United States Postal Service. So once it's you place your order, it will be sent to you, but the post office is experiencing tremendous delays. I am told that it is due to COVID-19. That's what I have been told. So bear in mind that when you do order, it's going to take some time. As a matter of fact, I have some stuff that is not being delivered here to my office. So I understand that's the go around. But if you place your order, it will be delivered. And also keep this in mind, when you call in, stay focused. Stay focused on the 4 wants. On the 4 wants. Everything that Mr. Fuller is going to say and has repeatedly said during all of our broadcasts. You have to stay on code or else you will get confused. So remember that. In other words, don't call in just to be calling or asking a question just to be asking. Have a point, and that point is focusing in on a code because, as he mentioned, a code works every time. Okay, with that in mind, let's start. Oh, yeah, and do this. Make sure you depress the number 1 button, as quite a few people have already. Okay. All right, Mr. Fuller, good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
Okay. This comes from Alpha, the first. He said, recently, Mr. Fuller, President Biden has been pressuring the Treasury Department to speed up the release of the new Harriet Tubman $20 bill. A lot of people are celebrating for the release of Harriet Tubman's $20 bill. Black people keep saying, quote, show me the Tubmans. Question. On page 35 of the original code, top page, the code says, quote, 2 basic methods of practicing racism, white supremacy. Number 1, deceit. Number 2, violence. Mr. Fuller, with the election of Vice President Harris and the release of the Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill, is this progress for black people? I'm confused because I was told this is progress at my job, and I stay on code and didn't respond. Mr. Fuller, any response you have will be helpful to me. Thank you.
I don't know. That's my basic answer. But whether or not it is so-called progress meaning helping to eliminate racism and replacing it with justice, correctness, and peace, and that's what we're using, truth. And so you tell the truth about whatever you're going to do in order to have the most constructive result. So you always start with that. So whether or not this will have a constructive result in the end on the way people think, speak, and act, then we will know if it contributes. Like the code itself. Well, that's what I wrote it. I wrote a book with the idea in mind that it would eventually, as fast as I possibly can, produce constructive results in people's behavior in all 9 areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The whole idea of everything that people should be doing everywhere on the planet is to produce the most constructive results, meaning produce truth, using truth rather, to produce a product called justice, which does not exist as far as recorded history has shown, right up to this very minute, meaning guaranteeing that no one is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in all of those 9 areas of activity. So in answer directly to the question, I don't know if that will be considered quote-unquote progress until the constructive results come in. In other words, and what is that? You have to have a goal in mind. If you make a portrait of a person or show a picture of a person, or just walk down the street or whistle a song, the idea of doing all of these things according to compensatory logic, am I producing a constructive result? I'm just walking down the street, whistling a sound, a song, and someone hears the song. And since I'm doing the whistling, I should ask myself, what do I want? Talking about the 4 wants now. I want to whistle this song. Why do I want to whistle a song walking down the street? And how do I plan to do it? And if I'm whistling, I've already had a plan because I'm doing it. And then the 4th question is, what do I expect the constructive result to be? Now, after I whistle this song, or while I'm whistling the song, like in the movie Snow White, whistle while you work. And so I'm doing the work of whistling a song. At that time, I'm doing it. Other people might hear it. So it comes down to do I want other people to hear what I'm whistling? Or is this just for me, an audience of one? And why am I doing it? Well, I have to answer that to myself. Well, it makes me feel invigorated when I whistle that particular song. Invigorated to do what? To do something, because I'm on my way to do something that I think will really bring about a constructive result for me or for somebody else or for both. So that's the reason. What do I expect a constructive result to be? That's why I'm doing it. I have a constructive result in mind. And it's the same way with the portrait of Harriet Tubman when it is shown on currency or it is shown on a wall or in a magazine. I mean, what is supposed to be the constructive result when someone looks at a portrait, a drawing, or a photograph of Mrs. Harriet Tubman? What's supposed to be the constructive result? And so we'll only know whether it has any value or not when the constructive results come in. Because the first thing you do is figure out, why is the picture there? Why is the picture there?
Hey, Norman. Hey, man. Sorry about it. Good morning.
And so whomever puts it there should say.
Using that as a phone, I was producing a radio show this morning, the Neely Fuller Show. And I had to use my cell phone to dial into the studio this morning. I was having trouble dialing in online, so that's why I was having confusion there.
We can hear that conversation.
I can hear that conversation going on now. Someone is talking to someone.
To my engineers, Mr. Fuller and I can hear that conversation. We got cut off there. Okay, hopefully get correction.
But that's the main thing. That's the main thing I'm trying to say. I just went a roundabout way of doing it like I do a lot of things. Just to give an illustration, to focus on really two words, constructive result. In every move that a creature makes on what we call the planet Earth, every creature in the form of a person, for sure, always keep in mind what is going to be the constructive result of this particular move that the person is making. So if you're going to draw a picture, what is going to be the constructive result?
Okay. Since you mentioned the word truth before we get to the callers, COVID Comics said, ask you this. He said, Mr. Fuller, so many people are afraid to speak the truth because they don't want their so-called friends and family to be mad at them for disagreeing with them and contradicting their beliefs. Should they just keep their mouths shut to maintain the peace, or should they speak the truth and confront the people they know who are ignorant of what is really going on around them?
You always ask for permission to speak, like in some military settings. A person who is of what they call, quote, unquote, lower rank will go to a person who is, quote, unquote, of higher rank and say, sir or ma'am, can I have permission from you to speak to you about a certain matter and give what the matter is? The person might say, you're going to speak to me about what? And you tell the person what you're going to speak about. I want to speak about the race issue. Well, I'm not going to talk to you about the race issue. Anything else? That might be the response. And so, if you have something else to speak about, then you speak about whatever else you want to speak about. You're expecting a what? Constructive result. And if the person doesn't want to talk to you about a certain subject, then you can pretty well assume that this is not going to produce a constructive result. So then you ask the second, like under compensatory logic, if you don't get what you asked for the first time, you ask for something else. Or if you don't get what you asked in your first question, then have a second question ready, or a third question, if you have them. If it's something else you want done, that will produce what? A constructive result. Because the whole thing in mind is to produce a constructive result. Now, if you're going to talk to somebody about something they don't want to talk about, most likely that's going to lead to an argument, and an argument will not produce constructive results. A conversation will. So then, what is the best way to have a conversation rather than an argument? Questions and answers. Go to your next question. Well, I would, and so I would say the compensatory way, if I was going to do it, I asked to speak about race, and the person say, we're not going to talk about race, period. Not in this room. Not here, not with me, ever. You got that straight. So if the person says that to me, I will say, I understand. So I will ask for permission to ask another question. And the person said, yes, go ahead and ask it. Then I will say, can I talk to you about the production of justice? And the person say, oh, yes, I'm all for that. I'm on board with that. In fact, that's just what I was thinking about. How do you produce justice? Okay, that's a question. See, so now we're on the road. And so I will continue to speak not about race, but about justice, because compensatory counter-racist logic, according to the code, if you talk about justice, you're going to be talking about racism and race. You're right in the center of it. So in answer to the question, that's the suggestion that comes out of the compensatory counter-racist code. A person who does not want to talk about race, you immediately ask for permission to talk about justice. Justice will be attached to the race issue like no two things are attached in the universe, in the behavior of people. So when a person says you have permission to talk to them about justice, meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, that leads smack into the race issue if it's people of color who are talking about justice.
Yes, sir.
So that automatically works. Do that.
All right.
Just go straight to justice. That'll take you right to the race issue anyway, and don't mention it because you've already said you're not going to mention it because you made that contract with the person you're talking to. You don't want to have an argument. But the person, him or herself, in the process of talking about the production of justice, they will lead you to talk about race, whether that person is white or non-white.
Mm-hmm.
You don't believe it, try it. If you talk long enough and ask enough questions, it's going to lead smack into the race issue because that's the biggest issue on the planet.
Yes. Okay. Let's go to the phone lines, and we're going to go to the 223 area, and we're going to have Darnell in the leadoff position. Darnell, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Good morning. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
My question, I have a VGQ and a question, if that's okay, Mr. Bobby.
If it's real quick.
Yeah, it is quick. The VGQ is just that I want to be able to stay online after I ask my question.
Okay, gotcha.
And the question is, Mr. Fuller, how is a victim of white supremacy used by the white supremacists in racial tailoring from the lowest, like a homeless person, to like the vice president, the female vice president? How are they used to be racially showcased to confuse the other non-white people who are victims? Thank you.
All righty.
Oh, well, if you're talking about racial showcasing specifically, racial showcasing is just using a person of color. The white supremacists will use a person, non-white person, to be showcased, meaning they put them out front. See, the old formula used to be all black people to the back of the bus, back of everything, back of the theater, up in what they call the crow's nest. I mean, crows are black. Get them crows up there in that balcony. I mean, and push them back as far as they can go. I mean, right to the wall if they're going to look at the movie same movie or the same play that we white people are going to look at. So when we look in the back of the room, we don't see any because they're up there in the roost. They're up over our heads, but in the back. I mean, they're farther away from the stage. And so we get the full enjoyment up close, and they get it from the back. And even though they're up higher, they're way back in the back. That used to be it in theaters and houses of opera and things like that. Movie houses, excuse me. And so racial showcasing in the modern day means all black faces up front. Put them up front. You walk into an office, first thing you see now, in a modern office, building just went up last week. Everybody's talking about it. It's a real modern place, a real artistic place. I mean, the latest technology, the architect's design is splendid. I mean, it'll knock your eyes out. And the first person you see when you walk in is a black person. So you get the impression, oh, wow, this is a very impressive place. But the black people, hey, they must be running this place. The first person I saw when I walked in there, first person I talked to was a black person. And then the next person was a black person. That's showcasing. All black faces to the front. That's the way it is here in 2021 in many, many, many places, and most places throughout the world now. Because the white supremacists have found out that if you showcase black people, our depth of thinking is not very deep, according to the white supremacists. And in most cases it's true, because they've kept us that way. So we are highly impressed by what we see up front. We are not the type of people that says, wait a minute, what are they up to now? Now, it used to be all black people to the back of the bus, back of everything. Go around to the back door. Don't come in that front door, Negro. You know better than that. I taught you better than that. I whipped you better than that. You should have learned that by now. Never come up knocking on that front door. Go around to the back. And make sure if you're male and black, your hat is off. But be at the back. Don't ever come through my front door. You're not white. Only white people are allowed to come through my front door. That's the way it used to be in a lot of places. Don't you ever insult a white person by knocking on that front door like you're equal to everybody else. No, you're not. But now, all over the world, it seems like the refined white supremacists, that's the ultimate white supremacists. White supremacists who are thinking 500 years ahead says, hey, we've been putting those black people in the back. They put them out front now. Make them think that because they're out front now, that means something, that means they have power. But, like in the movie Godfather, when you look at the cover or the book, The Godfather, you see what? Puppeteer strings on the cover of the book. And I think the movie opens that way, showing puppeteer strings. Puppets are being operated in such a way by a person who is out of sight. And it's the same thing all over the world now. You say, these black people are really, I mean, boy, my people are really moving. Man, we got everything. You see us everywhere. And you see us up front. We ain't no longer out of sight and in the back and hidden down in the basement somewhere. No, we're right up front. Yes, but who's pulling the strings that make you hop when they say hop? I think I painted the picture correct.
Okay.
I hope that it's understood. That's what the white supremacists are doing now. Black faces up front, showcasing. That's explained in the textbook for victims. You can get by going to producejustice.com. Racial showcasing.
Okay, let me do this right here. Start my music, please. You are listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here and heard on Blog Talk Radio. To get in contact with the show, simply dial 516-453-9921 and make sure you depress the number 1 button and you will get in line so that your question can be answered. If you would like to Gmail me, you can at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. And also, there's a chat room that is available. You can just get on the chat, and occasionally I'll have the opportunity to read your comments. Not all of them, but some of them. Thank you for Bay Monday. Sean Glenn is in. JJ Killer, the Killer. My other friend JJ is in, and Twinzan is in the house. That's in the chat room. But the best way is to call the number, again, 516-453-9921, and you can get on. Back to the phone lines. Let's go to the 832 area. That's going to be Everett from Houston. Everett, you are now, if I can buff you up, you are now on, and good morning to you.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Ford.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. My question for today is with the one, what do I want to do? What do I want to find out is, in order to end white supremacy, by black people of color following code, will it ultimately comes to white people who practice white supremacy will have to end white supremacy?
Do white people have to end white supremacy? Is that the question?
Yes, sir. The ones that practice white supremacy, will it ultimately have to be white folks to end white supremacy? Even if all black people was to be on code.
Yes, because they would be forced to. That's why it has to be a worldwide movement toward being codified. And that's an excellent question you're asking, because the whole book is about that. The white people who believe in white supremacy and want to continue it forever. We, as victims of racism, because white supremacy never should have been in the first place, it never should have existed, but somebody thought of an idea. It's an excellent way to get ahead, produce things, and be comfortable in this existence by mistreating people, because white supremacy means mistreatment. You can't have white supremacy without mistreatment. It's designed to mistreat people, dominate and mistreat people, and accomplish a whole lot in the process. Now, the end result might be to accomplish, like a lot of white supremacists said, well, black people benefit from white supremacy better than anything that they thought of. They wasn't doing nothing, running around with no clothes on and acting crazy and having tribal wars. And so we just knock their heads together and make them do something constructive. And that's a wonderful thing. And they should just shut up and let us run things, including run them from post to post. And eventually, everybody will have everything worked out in everybody's favor. If they'll just leave it alone and stop demonstrating and talking about we moving too slow, what would they be doing if they were on their own? They have never done anything but move slow and doing anything that made sense. The only thing they move fast with is in a getaway car after a robbery. That's all they're good for. They can't do anything constructive. takes white people to do something constructive. Things don't even happen that make sense until white people show up. You can ask black people themselves, does anything happen in that ghetto? But see, they don't explain how did the ghetto get to be a ghetto. All right? But that's just something I'm throwing in there. That's the question that you asked. If you're going to go that route, Mr. Mrs. White person, if you're going to go that route, how did black people get to be ghettoized, okay, and kept in there by brute force, really, including the brute force of what you call economics and all the other areas of activity, mind control, which is what everything starts with. But in direct answer to your question, yes, you drive them to the point through a code, the use of a code, to a point where the white supremacists, and you tell them this up front, that's where you're trying to drive them. That's where you're trying to drive them, and this is it. We're trying to drive you, the white people of this planet who believe in racism. We're using a code, or should be using a code, that will make you have to make a decision. And that decision will be, do away with racism and replace it with justice, which is what the whole world should have been doing all this time and never has done in recorded history. Drive them to replace the system of white supremacy, which is the world government at this time, replace it with a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no one is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, 24/7, all over the planet. Now, the code is supposed to be designed and be used to drive white people. I use the word drive, I might say guide, or influence, that's the better word, influence white people to look at the system of white supremacy and either decide to keep it or get rid of it and replace it with justice, or kill us all. That's the point that we're trying to drive them to, and we tell them that, and should, in every school, everywhere. They say, what's your ultimate objective? They want to replace the system of white supremacy with the system of justice and come up with a formula after that that produces a universal man and a universal woman working in conjunction, one with the other, so that everyone, white and non-white, practices justice and peace at all times through infinity. That is the goal, ultimately. But you can't do that in a system of white supremacy that's designed to do harm to people and to enjoy doing harm to people, which the white supremacists do. You see them do what they do to black people with a grin on their face, or, a knee on a neck, and you just put your hands in your pocket and be casual and laid back and yawn and look around at the cameras and say, hey, how do you like this? I mean, look at what I'm doing. I got this Negro down here, and I mean, he is going out of here, and I'm enjoying it. Bring me a drink or something. I mean, I'm going to have a little celebration after this. That's the way they do. And they have the power to do it because they have gained. When you study how to do something over a period of time, and you, like a laser, have your mind on doing nothing but that, you get real good at it. That's why white supremacy is so successful. Black people don't have any goal in mind at all, except just showing off to each other, if we tell the truth. That's our weakness. The only plan we make is to show off to other black people, even if it just means a drive-by shooting. That's showing off. That's all that is. You're not going to get $1 million for that. What you're going to get is a hard time if they catch you. They, meaning the white supremacists, because they might say you're disturbing my peace. My peace. I don't care nothing about your peace, but you disturb my peace when you do that type of thing without my permission. But I'll let you do a lot of it because it works for me. Y'all can kill each other all you want to. You turn a gun on me, you're going to find out what hell is because I produce guns. So you bragging about walking up and down the street with your gun. You ain't even going to have a gun, Negro, unless I give it to you. I'm the gospel. I'm your God. You don't have any other. Get that through your thick skull. Now get out of here and keep doing my bidding because that's the way it is now and always has been in recorded history. But in answer to the question, yes, we're trying to have a code that will bring about white people getting together with themselves and saying, you know what, we don't want to kill all these people, or we might be in trouble with the Creator if we do that. So we'll go with justice and see how that works. We talk about it all the time. Everybody does. But let's really put our shoulder to the wheel and have a system of justice. And then we shake hands and we go with it. But up till that time, we should just stay the course. We're in a war, so we should act like it.
All righty. Let's do this here. This is from the WAB. It says this, Mr. Fuller, black people in general have been taught by the white supremacists to seek a messiah, to always look for and follow a leader. This is why in most black homes you'll find images of a Jesus figure, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, or Obama. And when you have a tendency to do that, logic goes out the window. Right now, there's a spokesman who's emerged presenting himself as a black militia leader and orator. Black people online have fallen in love with him and have become staunch defenders of his while knowing little about him, even after his arrest this past weekend on federal charges. My point is, he's very suspect, and unfortunately, it's hard to point this out to a group of people who are desperate for leadership. And so I ask you, Mr. Fuller, to speak a bit more on how black people can follow the logic, be their own leader, to question everyone and everything and take emotional attachments out of the equation. Because I know if we can ever get to that point, your code book / concept will take off and catch on like wildfire.
That's why I wrote it. See, I'm not knocking the people who say that they are leaders, that they are the supreme leaders of black people, whether they're white or non-white. I'm not permitted to do that according to the code. I can only say they are saying what they are saying or they are doing what they are doing, particularly when it comes to non-white people. When you ask me that, the code says that's all I can say. Why? Because it will lead to an argument if I do anything else. And codification is about not looking for another argument or taking old arguments and recycle them forever. Why? Because it doesn't produce constructive results. It just gets black people fighting among themselves about who the maximum leader is or who the fashionable leader is this year. Okay? So you ask a logical question in the universe. What is the best leader? And is it a person that you can go down the block and talk to? Well, you might say yes, so you go down the block and talk to that person. But in the talk to that person, you might ask yourself, a logical question according to the code. What is the leader following? That's very important. Black people all over the world who say that they have a leader should ask him or herself, what is the leader following? And the leader, if you talk to most leaders, they'll say they're following instructions. And they say, well, what instructions are you following? They'll say instructions that come to mind and comes into their minds. So now a question is raised, can those same instructions come to your mind if you seek them? Because all down through history, when people ask questions, the answers gravitate toward the source of the question. That's always been. Every inventor and every person, every 5-year-old, 6-year-old might say, I just thought of something. You know, when a person learns to talk. Many people use that expression. Everybody does, I guess, at some time. I just thought of something. Now, that raises another question, because everything in codification is about questions and answers. Where was that thought before you got it? Well, your answer might be, oh, I don't know. Whatever created me. I got a brain, so I guess whatever created me gave me that thought. And many people who call themselves leaders say, I'm the leader of this flock. I'm the leader of this. You ask them, well, where did you get your leadership ability? Oh, it came from my creator. Oh, well, just like it came to you, can it come to each individual? Is that possible? Well, with my leader, everything is possible. Because my leader is this person and that person. You know, some of them are present now, and some of them, my main leader lived thousands of years ago. And all my main leader is still sitting on a throne somewhere, unknown. Or my leader is the creator of the universe. Oh, well, if the creator of the universe can send you a message, how come I can't get the same message? By using what? Questions and answers, because that's what you did. You just said so. You start questioning things, and you got answers. And your leader sent you the answers, because you're the ones who's raising the questions. That's the logic. So in wrapping this up, if people understand the frame of reference that I'm using, that's what the code says do. You ask the same questions that everybody else asks, and even ask more questions, and then you might become your own leader, which is what I think the Creator has in mind anyway, because when your leader tells you something that came from your Creator, you now become the leader of yourself anyway. So it might be possible that you can get the same messages that your leader has simply by asking questions and answers, because that's what your leader did. Your leader started off saying, what do I want to do? I want to be a leader of all these ignorant black people, say, for example, with their ignorant selves. How do I become a leader? I become a leader by, well, why do I want to do that? Well, because they need it. Okay, how do I plan to do it? Well, I plan to do it by studying, by asking. And what is studying? What does studying consist of? Asking questions. That's what study is. Study means you ask questions. All studying is about questions and answers. So, so I'll ask questions. And the answers will come to me if I keep asking, because that's the way the universe works. The creator of the universe will send you answers to questions that you ask, because you are the source of the questions. So can't everybody, now this is the bottom line, I went a long way around of doing it, And I hope somebody picks something up in the way that I'm describing it. That's why I do it. But can't you as an individual ask questions endlessly? Because the universe is set up by whatever created the universe, that whomever asks the questions will get the answers if they keep asking. The answers will, from somewhere, will gravitate toward the source of the questions. Every inventor will tell you that. Everybody who's ever said, I just thought of something, will tell you that. So the question is, where was that thought before you got it? It was from whatever created you. Otherwise, you couldn't have gotten it. You wouldn't have like a radio. It receives signals. But the radio has to reach out. You turn it on, and the way the radio is made, it's made to draw in those signals. And then you hear messages that you haven't heard before. Every inventor understands that.
Okay.
That's compensatory logic.
Compensatory logic. Okay. Let's do this here. JMCL 5078 says this, that he did get his word guide. So thank you for that, which brings me to this. I understand that the United States Postal Service is experiencing delays in their packaging or you receiving packages at the house. I understand that they're having a problem with the COVID-19. So when you order your books from ProduceJustice.com, if there seems to be a delay, now you know why. They are overwhelmed. I have seen pictures. I know of personal experiences with the United States Postal Service, and it's not looking real good. So hang on or hang in there. When ProduceJustice.com mails it out, it will be there. As to when, I don't know for sure, but not to worry. It is being mailed. And since we're on that, Mr. Fuller, quickly and briefly, can you just speak about your book and how we can get it?
Yes, you can get the book, and this is covered directly and indirectly, the things I've been saying so far in the book. At least the concept is definitely covered. That, the United Independent, that means you're united not with people, but with what people should be doing. That should be your leader. And so the book is about, the title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept, meaning we don't have a code. We, meaning the victims of white supremacy. That is our weakness. And in answer to the, again, to reiterate the answers to the questions that have been asked so far on this program this morning, that's what this book is designed to provide answers for. It's an answer book, questions and answers, basically, around the concept of each person who is a victim of white supremacy becoming his or her own leader as swiftly as possible, simply by raising the questions about what to do and what not to do in every circumstance, because this is what produces what? Constructive results. Knowing what to do, what not to do. Knowing what to say and what not to say in every area of activity as you go about your ordinary activities in each and every day. That's what the book is designed to accomplish, so that every victim knows exactly what to do and what not to do in every circumstance. It doesn't get any better than that. Knowing what to do and what not to do, that will work best for that circumstance. It doesn't get any better than that, according to universal compensatory logic. Compensatory meaning making up for the logic that doesn't exist now, because black people are not logical. But you get the book by going to ProduceJustice.com. ProduceJustice.com.
All righty. Okay, let's go to the phone lines in the 704. You know what? I am not going to even attempt to pronounce your first name, but it's from Charlotte, North Carolina. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, I'm not going to call your name because I cannot pronounce it properly, but go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
The name is Theatri Green.
Okay.
Charlotte. And I really have not a question, but a compliment for Mr. Neely. First of all, good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I didn't want to use a question, but because of what Mr. Fuller has done, I want to compliment him. You know, they say sometimes you give people their coffee and their roses while they can still appreciate him. And for his discipline, for Mr. Fuller to start with say he's still learning. And that just speaks volumes of someone who is still learning. And so I just wanted to say thank you for the work that you've done. I've been a student of yours for over 40 years, and to this program, it warms my heart. And I know you say you thought about the code when you were on a radar site in Japan and just being quiet and was able to listen. And if more people would kind of follow what you've done, read your work, I think the world really would be a better place. So I just want to say thank you for what you've done and encourage people to really, really study you while you're still with us. Thank you.
Okay, 40 years, that's a long time. Thank you, my brother. 40 years, Mr. Fuller, that person has been following me. That is, to me, I think that's quite an accomplishment. Okay, let's see here. We got many on the line. Shay from Japan, Gregory from West Palm Beach. But right now, we are going to go to the 503, and that would be Portland. And behind enemy, behind enemy, whoops. Did I get you on here behind enemy lines?
Yes.
Good morning. Okay, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Yes. We'll start with a VGQ. Mark Twain said it was easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. And I concluded that it is easier to confuse people than to convince them that they have been confused. And my question today is it true that the only black culture that black people have in the system of racism and white supremacy is being subject to the system of racism and white supremacy, which is white people practicing racism in all the areas of human activity? That's my question.
Well, I think here again, and I do this almost on every question. I didn't understand the question. So
okay, no problem. Okay, my question is it true that the only black culture that black people have in a system of racism and white supremacy is being subject to the system of racism and white supremacy, which is white people practicing racism in all the areas of human activity?
For some reason, I just don't understand that question. And I can't answer a question I don't understand, and that's my fault. I mean,
yes,
I should be able to understand questions because that's what I'm on the air for. But
okay, I can make it a little more simple for you. I guess what I'm really saying is,
if you can, yes, that's the best way that I learn. I learned at the kindergarten level.
Right on, I understand that. Okay, I guess what I'm saying is the only culture that black people have in this system.
I can take your question in segments because that's the codified way.
Okay.
Now, what's this first thing you're saying? Because it looks like there's several questions being asked in one question. That's how it's coming across to me. So I'm getting a little confused.
No.
So
it's just one question.
The first part that you're saying is what?
Is it true? Hello? Yes. Hello?
Is it true?
Hello?
Yes,
okay, yeah.
I'm
Is
here.
it true that the only culture that black people have in the system of racism and white supremacy?
I want to get
culture.
that first word.
Is the only culture. The only culture.
What's that word?
Culture.
Culture?
Yes, sir.
Culture.
Did you say
yes, sir.
culture?
Yes, sir. Culture.
The only culture. Okay, continue.
That black people have.
That black people have.
Yes. In a system of racism, white supremacy.
In a system of white supremacy.
Yes. It's being subject to the system of racism, white supremacy, which is white people practicing.
Well, wait a minute.
Racism.
Wait a minute. The only culture that black people have in a system of white supremacy is what?
Is being subject.
Are they subject?
No, being subject. Yes.
Being subject, okay.
Subject. Yes.
The only culture that black people have being subject to white supremacy.
Right.
Okay, continue.
That what I'm saying is that's basically is that true? The only culture that people run around and say that there's black culture. I'm stating that I don't see no black culture. All I see is black people being led to practice, being led by racism. That's what I see.
The answer to that, yes. According to the code, the answer to that is yes. The only culture that black people have in the system of white supremacy is nothing but a reaction to the system of white supremacy. And that is black culture, which is why it is not successful. Black culture is what you do. Culture is not some mysterious thing that you find in the Sahara Desert, buried up under the ground. Black people say, I'm going to search for my culture. Culture is whatever you're doing at the time you're doing it. That's all culture is. If you're in a canoe, paddling a canoe down a river, that's your culture. When you get out of that canoe and start walking across the land, you are not a canoe paddler. That is not your culture. You are now a pedestrian because you're using your feet to walk. You're no longer in that canoe. You're walking across the desert now. No water around. That's your culture. Culture is nothing but what you're doing at the moment that you're doing it. And you say, well, no, culture is a whole package and whatnot. Package of what? Where are the borderlines to a culture? So if you are subject to a system of white supremacy, that's your culture. If you're a victim of white supremacy, that's your culture. Your dominant culture, because all cultures are whatever you're doing at the moment you're doing it. If you're robbing a bank or robbing somebody's grandmother on a bus stop, that's black culture if you're a black person doing it. I mean, there's no way around that. Oh, no, that ain't black culture. I mean, that's what we picked up from somebody else's culture. Well, you picked it up because that's what you're doing. Being a gangster, being a robber, is your black culture with your black self. You're doing it. Now, I'm fixing to gravitate now towards something, the code violation again. I'm fixing to start preaching. But in answer to your question, according to the code, in a sober and logical manner, which is what I'm supposed to have at all times, which I violate, I mean, on every program, but I have to watch that. But in answer to it, black culture in the universe in 2021, in all areas of activity, is nothing but a tacky, trashy, and or terroristic reaction to the system of white supremacy itself. That's according to the code.
Okay.
And that's all black culture is.
And with that, I have to leave it right there because we have come to the conclusion of our first hour. Thank you, Behind the Line from Portland. That is the end of the first hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller. We're going to take a 5-second break, and then we're going to go into the second hour. Thanks for listening, and hopefully you'll return next week. For those who are still with us, hang on for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Excellent question. All righty, welcome to the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and we are here to take your calls. All you have to do is dial this number, 516-453-9921. Make sure you press the number 1 button, and you will get in line for your calls to be answered. If you elect, you can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. At gmail.com. Please, ma'am, please, sir, do not write me a novel because I only have a certain amount of time that I can read that. And while we're on the subject of time, please, ma'am, please, sir, be sure that when you ask your question to Mr. Fuller that you stay on code, considering the 4 wants, and make it short, please, so that Mr. Fuller can hear it and then address it, and we can move on because the phone lines are blowing up, which is a good thing, meaning that you are interested, and that's good. And we have new callers every week. So again, the number 516-453-9921. You press the number 1 button, and we'll try to get some Gmails in here. Let's start off in the 516. Gregory, let me see if I can get you in, Gregory. Gregory, yeah, okay, got you in. Gregory, good morning, and what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Hey, good morning, brothers. My question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. is that after seeing the White House insurrection that happened on January 6th, does he think that we as black people should assume that the government will assist us in eradicating the systemic white supremacy? And I'd like to stay online. I just have another question if I could ask right after that regarding that.
Well, Greg, I can't take your second question because we're just so jammed up. Okay,
all
go
right.
ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. I'd like to stay online if possible.
Okay, all right. Mr. Fuller, go ahead, please.
If I understand the question here again, the government is the system of white supremacy. There's no American government. Never has been. You can't have the system of white supremacy and an American government on the same planet at the same time. That's incompatible. The American government is yet to be realized. It's an excellent idea. It's a concept. Like this, the Counter-Racist Code is an idea. What I've written in the book, these are just ideas because they haven't come to fruition. And what's supposed to be an American practices justice. And it's impossible for anybody, anywhere on planet Earth in 2021 to practice justice in a system of white supremacy. That cannot be done. I don't care how hard you try. Why? The system of white supremacy won't let it. So in answer to the question, no, you still have the system of white supremacy in place after all the insurrections or whatever you want to call them, demonstrations. As long as the system is in place of white supremacy, what you got is what is in place, and that's the system of white supremacy. It's either not here or it's here. So that's the way you look at it. You look at anything that people are doing, and after they get through doing it, you can nod off and go to sleep and wake up and ask this one logical question. Is the system of white supremacy still in place, yes or no, sir or ma'am? And if the answer, yes, it's still in place, then you say, according to the code, there hasn't been any progress. Either something is in place that shouldn't be there, or something else is there. Now, if there's something else ain't there, and you just have one system that is there, and that's a system of racism dominating the conduct of the people on the planet Earth here in 2021, nothing has changed. Everything has the illusion of having been changed, but we're still talking about the same thing. The fact that we're having this program right now means everything is still solidly in place. And the laws of the universe say an object remains in place until something powerful enough to move it moves it. So this, tinkering around on the edges of something, you don't call that progress. I mean, a little bit here and a little bit there, but it's still in the same system. As long as the system is in place, nothing has changed. That's the compensatory codified way of looking at it, because that's the universal logical way of looking at anything.
Yes.
It either is or it isn't.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, Gregory from West Palm Beach. Sorry we could not get your second question. There was many on the line, but thank you for your patience, and I do have it so that you can still continue to listen to the program. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this is from Miss Anonymous. I'm going to morph these two questions into one. Miss Anonymous says this: Mr. Fuller, why does most black family members during family gatherings want their relative to gossip about their spouse to them or tell them all their issues that's going on in the relationship / marriage, and how can a person avoid this type of unnecessary question when they are around that type of person during special gatherings?
People, according to the code, all people, regardless of whether they're so-called quote-unquote kin or people you work with, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there's 10 stops in the textbook for victims of white supremacy. Gossip is one of those stops. One of the things people have to stop doing. And what is gossip? Gossip is saying something about someone that you wouldn't say about that person if the person was standing there listening or sitting there listening. But even then, some people would do it. So that's not gossip because you're saying it right there, but it starts a thing called an argument. And black people should be out of the argument business here in 2021. I mean, every black person, every non-white person on the planet should say, I don't argue. So how do you avoid an argument? You avoid an argument by having conversations, according to the code. Now, what's the difference between an argument and a conversation? A conversation, an argument rather, is designed to win arguments. A conversation is designed to solve problems. So if you're sitting around a dinner table or wherever and you start talking, everything that everybody says should be designed to solve a problem. And how do you solve a problem? Through conversation, questions, and answers. You just say, well, starting with, what do you want to do? Getting to the 4 wants that are on page 171, 172. Well, I want to talk about Cousin Hazel. Why do you want to talk about Cousin Hazel? That's the next question. Because you ask the person, what do you want to do? Everybody wants to do something. So right there at that dinner table, they've been bursting to tell everybody else about Cousin Hazel or talk about Cousin Hazel and whatever it is going on with Cousin Hazel. So you say, I want to talk about Cousin Hazel. You know, y'all be quiet about all this other stuff. I want to talk about Cousin Hazel. So everybody agrees. Okay, you want to talk about, that's what you want to do? You want to talk about Cousin Hazel? Yeah, I want to talk about Cousin Hazel before we get to this other stuff. Well, I got other stuff to get to, but it's Cousin Hazel right now. Okay, why do you want to talk about Cousin Hazel? This is in the textbook, the 4 wants. Why do you want to talk to us about Cousin Hazel? Well, I got a lot of things to say about stuff that she's doing that I definitely don't approve of, and I think it's crazy. I mean, and it's messing up Jack. I mean, and our other cousin Harold. I mean, it's just what she's doing. I mean, it's blah 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 blah. Okay. All right. Okay, it's a mess. Cousin Hazel is a mess. That's what you're saying? Yeah. All right. Why do you want to talk about it? Because it's mess. I mean, it's family business, but it's messing up the whole family. Okay. So that's why you want to talk about it. Now, how do you plan to do it? I've been planning on this dinner to let y'all know what's going down. That's why I gave the dinner. That's the main reason for y'all coming over here eating my food. I want y'all to listen to what I got to say about Cousin Hazel. Okay? So you talk. But here's the bottom line question. Now, this dinner was planned to talk about Cousin Hazel. Talk about Cousin Hazel for what? That's what you should be thinking. Okay? Cousin Hazel's got a problem, and her problem is spilling over to the whole family problem. Okay? And making us family look bad and making bad things happen to the family. She's a real problem. Okay? All right. So that's why you wanted to do it, and that's why you made this dinner planning. Now, what do you expect a constructive result to be? That's the bottom line of us sitting around here talking about Cousin Hazel in this manner. Is this the best way to do it? Or is there a better way? Because you're saying things about her, and so what do you want us to do? Now it gets into the second phase of those 4 wants. Mm-hmm. What do you want us to do? We're here. And why do you want us to do it? Each one of us. Why are you telling us all this? And then the third question, what's your plan for us doing whatever it is to correct it? That's number 3. You want to talk about Cousin Hazel. What's the plan? Because she ain't here. She should have been invited here to hear what we are saying. And even though she's not here, she should be informed. Because you don't say anything about anybody that you can't repeat to the whole world. That's a part of the code. That'll knock a whole lot of stuff in the head that people say all over the world. But the code says that. Never say anything to anybody about anything that you are not willing to repeat to the whole world, except those things, the exceptions, all codified rules, and the code is a part of the exception, or the exception is a part of the code. If it's going to be harmful to somebody, you don't say it. Okay? But whatever you say, it has to have what? That 4th thing in your wants, be a constructive result. So you ask whoever's talking about Cousin Hazel, what do you expect to be the constructive result of us all being over here talking about Cousin Hazel? Is that going to produce anything constructive? And Cousin Hazel isn't even here to say what she has to say about what you say she's doing? Is that the constructive way of going about doing it? Is there a more constructive way, starting with having her present? Because we don't want to engage in this family in any kind of gossip. Gossip means you say something about somebody who's not present. If you're going to say something about somebody and it sounds like it might be controversial, that person should be present to clear up the controversy or to have us clear it up. Otherwise, it doesn't come under the heading of constructive results. Those 2 words is what the entire code is about. Always center on those 2 words, just 2 words, worldwide. talking to white people or black people about anything, in the office, about anybody. What's the constructive result? Sir, you're doing a lot of talking. You've been talking for an hour or two. Ma'am, you said this and you said that and whatnot at the meeting the other day. Now, what do you expect the constructive result to be of everything that was said or done? And then wait for the answer. Don't argue about the answer. Just have, if you get an answer, have another question ready if you have one. But don't argue about the answers that you get. That's the codified procedure.
Okay. All righty. Whoops. Got that off there. Lost my point page here. There we go. All righty. Okay, before we move on, Mr. Fuller, very quickly, Black Rat wanted to know this. What do, quote, white, end of quote, people mean when they say something is a matter of, quote, national security, end of quote?
You ask them. Here again, see, codification, that's the process. It's real simple. In every situation, everything should be questions and answers. So if someone says something about national security, first thing, what is the question that you ask? What is national security? Starting with the first word, national. Okay, it's all kinds of security, I guess. So this is national security. So what do you mean by national? And don't you try to answer, because you're asking a person a question. You want their answer. You already have your answer. Or maybe you don't have. But it doesn't matter. When you ask a person a question, you want their answer, not the answer you got in mind, because you want them to take you where everybody needs to go, because that's the way it's going to go. Because the code says when you ask a question, the answers will take everybody right where they need to be. It won't take everybody where they want to be, but it'll take everybody where they should be. That's the nature of questions and answers. It just got to be enough. So when someone asks, or someone makes a statement about national security, you say, sir, ma'am, if you don't mind, I have a question. What do you mean by national security? Starting with the first word, national. Now, you might have 50 questions about just that word national. What makes a nation? Okay. What is national? Does it have anything to do with nation? And what is a nation? What makes a nation? What does a nation consist of? What is a nation not consistent of? The things that are outside of a nation. You might have 50 questions about just that one word. That's all we need for codification and to solve problems. Solve the race problem is going to be done through questions and answers. That's the logic.
Yes, sir. Okay. All righty. Thanks for the person that is from Findlay just listening in capital letters. Thank you, Findlay, Ohio. Cam, we're going to get to you right after we read this Gmail. This is a VGQ from Lamar, Mr. Brown. Lamar, Mr. Fuller, says this. Hello and good day to you, Mr. Fuller. This is VGQ. There is a disturbing trend among so-called black people of the planet that black males and black females are calling black females bitches. Black so-called entertainers are doing this as far as if it is a normal thing to say. It has become that way. However, I have never heard a white entertainer or even a white person in a public setting refer to a white woman as a bitch. This is disturbing. Yet, it is just one of the many trends that Mr. Fuller talks about. It seems to be crystal clear that this behavior is directed toward us, quote, the simple folk, end of quote, by the white supremacists. If you hear this VGQ being read and you have allowed yourself to fail or fall into this disgust, please in capital letters. STOP. Please stop calling black women that word. Please. At some point, we must wake up. Thank you. That was from Mr. Lamar. Mr. Fuller wanted that to be read, and it was. Okay, 516-453-9921 is the number that you can call to get into the program. If you just want to listen, just make sure you tell the call screener that you want to listen. You can also Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Okay, let's go down to the Gem City. That would be Dayton, Ohio, and we have Cam. You are on, Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Thank you so much, host Bobby. And Mr. Fuller, I admire you, and I want to say thank you so much for all the work that you have done. And I remember the one of the last callers that called you with the question about culture, and you were talking about white supremacists. I want to, and I know you know this, but it comes to mind, the statement that you made in the room with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing present that changed her whole life. And that statement, and correct me if I'm wrong, is racism is a system. Now, you're still talking about that. That goes to show our people that the issue, as you have forestated, has not been resolved. Now, my question to you regarding what the one caller had about culture that was so confusing, and you said culture is what you do. And I would ask you to elaborate on a statement by Dr. John Henry Clark, who stated that having been removed from the culture, the incubator culture of our existence, and placed into the incubator culture of the colonizer, we have become most unlike the people who we truly are and more like the people we are truly not. How do you feel about that statement? The same?
Well, it's not a feeling. Everything in codification is not about feelings unless the feelings are attached to logic. And the logic says, for what we should be trying to do, according to logic, is when a question is asked about someone who is non-white, who is talking about anything connected with race, racism, or counter-racism, I am duty-bound according to the code, and this is something I invented and put in the code because I say it works best, to say that if Dr. John Henry Clark, and I have been in his presence and heard him speak, and etc., if he said these things, you think about what he said. And if anybody asks, like you're asking, what do I have to say about what he said, I say he said what he said. And you think about and study what he said. And then you come to the conclusions that you come to about what you should do about what he said, if there's anything to do. So the code says when one victim of racism, non-white person, black person, asks another victim of racism about what a third victim of racism says about race, racism, or counter-racism, either directly or indirectly, or in this case, black culture, your response should be, according to the code, in order to produce the constructive result, because that's what you're looking for when you're talking, always try to get a constructive result. The code says, and I'll repeat it, I'm duty bound Whatever Dr. Clark said, he said what he said.
Yes,
That's
sir.
how I respond to that. That's a
awesome.
universal response. That's all I can say. He said what he said, and you think about, and you ask everybody to think about what he said and see how you can use what he said to produce what? A constructive result. I'm duty bound to do that. I'm not supposed to evaluate what another black person says or does about race, racism, or counter-racism. I'm not qualified to evaluate it. It's only the person who is speaking and whomever they're speaking to, they make their own evaluation and don't pass that on to anybody else except just to say that he said what he said. She said what she said. Why is this? It's to keep controversy, unnecessary controversy between or conflict from happening between victims of racism.
Okay. Thank you there, Kim from Dayton, Ohio. Let me see. Let's start the music here. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard here on blogtalkradio.com. If you'd like to call in, just do this, 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that slowly, 516-453-9921, or you can Gmail me, the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, B-O-B-B-Y, at gmail.com. Chat room is available. It's on and popping right now. A lot of comments in there. So if you want to do that, you can do that. I don't know how, you know what, I don't even know how to get into the chat room, but somebody can give me the instructions, then I can repeat that on so other people can get into the chat room and see the chats in there. Okay, 516-453-9921. By the way, when Mr. Fuller talks about getting materials from ProduceJustice.com, and you did order, or you are going to order, or you have a order, keep in mind that the United States Postal Service is experiencing delays in shipping products, maybe even your mail, but packages in particular. They are backlogged. I don't know how long it will last, but it will eventually get there, particularly packages from ProduceJustice.com. So just hang on in there. I have some inside information about that, and so I was told and have seen pictures of the log jam in there, so it's coming. But Mr. Fuller will discuss that a little more in about 15 minutes when he talks about his book. Okay, let's do this one here. This is this is from Sleepy, Mr. Fuller. On the Gmail, says, I got a new sales job where I can make lots of money, but in our training, we are taught sales pitches that include many lies, yet we are told to stick to the script given. We essentially deceive our customers. Mr. Fuller, do you have any thoughts on telling little lies over time, actually poisoning our own spirit?
Yes, according to the code, you got to have three factors in order to have peace. You have to have truth, and truth is described in the textbook as that which is, meaning the opposite from that which isn't. Truth is that which is, 3 words. That is what it is. What is it? It is what it is. In other words, reality. Truth is truth. Something that is rather than isn't. So you always reveal truth in a manner. Truth is a tool. That which is a tool. You know, any object, any word that you use, reveal the truth. Tell it like it is, like that old cliche saying that black people use in the northwestern hemisphere. Tell it like it is. You know, don't add anything, don't take anything away, because that's not truth. and it becomes something else, meaning false. So you reveal truth, meaning you transfer what you know is true in such a manner that it produces two things: justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person who needs help the most gets the most constructive help. That's the first thing that truth, you use truth for. Truth is a tool. Revealing truth, you're trying to accomplish something. You're trying to accomplish justice. That's number one. Number two, you're trying to accomplish correctness. Now, correctness is you treat things. See, justice has to do with people, and correctness has to do with people and things. So you make sure that people are relating to the things that are in the universe, like food, like water, the general environment. You do your very best to do the correct things in all of your interaction with water, with food, with everything that you see, material objects, with animals. We haven't achieved that, but you try to do your best. But you got to have truth in order to start with that, in order to produce a product called justice and correctness. And then theoretically, that will, when you put those three together, you have a thing called peace. And this is in the textbook. So you start with the truth about everything. So how do you handle that in answer to the question? When people are doing anything, you just simply say, you ask a question, because all problems, without exception, are solved through the process of what? According to the code, according to compensatory logic, through the process of questions and answers. So at a meeting, when something is proposed, you just simply say, is this true? And don't argue about the answer. Just put a question mark behind that question. Once you put a question mark behind a question, don't move to the second question until the first question is answered. Or you'll have a series of questions about the first questions. You can do that. But don't move to that second question until the first question is answered. That's the codified procedure. So you just simply say, they're proposing to do this, proposing to do that, somebody, as an example. And when they finish, you just say, well, this thing that we're going to say to the public, is it true, sir, ma'am? And if they say, no, it's not true, then you'll say, well, why would we at this institution say something that's not true? In other words, this is something you want to do. You want to say something that's not true. Now, that's what you're saying to yourself, because you have already got an answer to the question. But now you move to that second question. Why do you want to tell people something that's not true? And wait for an answer. Don't argue about the answer. And let them tell you. Then you move to the third question. How do you plan to tell this untruthful thing to the people? And let them tell you. Then you go to the punchline, the fourth question about wants. It's in the textbook. Because you ask yourself that question. That's how it's presented in the textbook. You ask yourself about what do you want to do? Because everybody wants to do something every minute of the day that they're awake. But that fourth question, what do you expect the constructive result to be? And wait for the answer and let them tell you. And then you can go back to and then when they answer, you can say, now, I got a series of maybe 100 questions coming. You may not have them ready right at that time, But the next thing you do is come up with a whole bunch of other questions. That is, what if someone finds out that you and me are involved in not telling the truth about this product? What do I say to the people when they find this not to be true, but find it to be false? Sir, ma'am. And will you put this in writing? Whatever your answer is. Because we're getting this from you. And let them answer. Particularly on any kind of job that you're on. You always want it in writing, and you want a signature on it of the person who initiated it and a date. And maybe add whom these things were said to. Who was present at the time. You won't say that the people heard it, but you can just say who was present at the time. Because somebody might want to ask them about that. That's if, after you ask the other people who are present, do you want your name attached to having heard what was said, that this person said, that you know is not true? Do you want your name on this document? Because when you start talking about anything that's not true, you want some signatures behind whomever initiated this non-truth. And you can ask the person, how come you don't want to say that you said this to us? Because you make a note of it that it was said. You want that for your records, and you keep that. That's the procedure. Because sooner or later, somebody just might find out that what was said to be true turns out to be false, and it was said deliberately. The person said, oh, yeah, it's false, but we're going to say it's true. Well, why do you want to do that? And what do you expect the constructive result to be? And what do you expect the constructive result to be for me and all the rest of the people here when this becomes revealed? Because, you know, as an old saying, that truth comes to the surface sooner or later in one form or another. May go for a long time, but it'll come to the surface in some form. Even if no one really finds it out, the origin of it, the effects of it is going to come to the surface immediately because it's something that you're doing that's going to affect other people. Or you can answer the question, is this going to affect other people? You ask whatever questions come to mind, and you should have thousands of them. That's the main thing. Try to think of every possible question that will ever be asked by anybody about what is fixing to happen from this meeting you're having in that room at that time. Because these questions may go on and on and on, and somebody be seeking answers to them years from now about what was said and done that was false. That's the codified way. Hello? Hello? Is anybody there?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Yes. Was I cut
there
off?
You go. No, I think I was cut off. Okay, anyway.
Well,
be good
was I
one.
cut off from the audience in answer to the question?
No, you weren't. No, you were not cut off.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. Be Good One has said this about the book, that he ordered the book, and his came within a week. So that's good news. Hopefully that'll be good news for other people. And Mr. Fuller will speak about the book in a few moments here. Okay, we got about 4 callers and an announcement. Let's do this. Let's go to the 682 Jay from Findlay. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? See if I can buffer you up. Okay, Jay from Findlay, Ohio. Go ahead. What is your question for Mr. Fuller?
Yes, sir. I have a VGQ and a question. I'll make it real quick.
Go ahead.
My VGQ is a recommendation of a short journalism on YouTube. It's called Blacks on Blacks. It's a journalism documentary from 1968 from Joe Saltman, and it's called Blacks on Blacks Journalism, 1968. And my question for Mr. Fuller is, I've heard you say that white supremacists burn midnight oil to keep it in place, to keep white supremacy in place. It means they work in overtime, and it's just business as usual. So my question is, would the destruction of white supremacy be non-profitable?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
The question is, would getting rid of white supremacy be non-profitable? Well, if you replace it with something, if you replace it with a system of justice, which is what everybody on the planet should have in mind, that no person, not for one fraction of a second, no person on the planet should ever be mistreated. See, racism was about mistreatment. Now, in order to have this thing called justice, replace racism with justice, it means you have to guarantee that nobody's mistreated. There's no reason to mistreat people, period. None. Everything on this planet is available that it takes to get things done without mistreating anyone. But the white supremacists said, oh, no. No, that ain't going to work. And even if it does work, we don't want it. We enjoy mistreating people. You know, we brag about it. We write books about it, make movies about it. People being mistreated. We glorify death. You know, there's a thing called life, existence, and there's a thing called non-life, or non-existence. And when you cut off people's existence, we make fun of that. We write books called mystery books, detective stories. Most books that we spend a lot of money making, and movies we spend a lot of money and a lot of technical stuff we do to glorify what? Killing people. We hang medals on people's chests about how many people did you kill. That's what we want to know. We want some body counts, mostly non-white. And that's what we enjoy. We want to continue that. So in answer to the question, there's profits to the white supremacists in mistreating people and in guaranteeing that people don't have the things that they need to do constructive things. Just give them enough to cause all kinds of non-constructive things to happen. Give them drugs, knowing that that's non-constructive. Put smoking tobacco all in, and tell them glorify it, advertise it. This is the thing to do. Take artificial food and put it on the shelves. Not real food. It's in a package that attracts you, and you say, that looks like something that might be tasting pretty good. So they load it up with a lot of this, that, and the other to make it taste good, knowing full well that it'll kill you. It's not going to make you healthy. The white supremacists like that. They enjoy that. They make sex artificial. All right, I got some new types of sex here for you. Come on over. Take your pick. I'll help you. I'll make it all legal and spread it, give you all the money you need to advertise it if you're black. All right, get more people on board with it. Artificial sexuality. And they call it right through your face. Hey, this is something we came up with. I mean, we got a little bit of trans this and trans that, and We got transactions in sex all over the place. Take your pick. We're going to come up with hundreds of them that you can choose from. Okay? That old-fashioned stuff. So, your question was, is it being constructive? Yes, racism is constructive for producing material things, but it makes a mess of people, both white and non-white, because it makes us something that we should not be when we have the capability of practicing justice. So black people, non-white people on this planet, should try to put the system of white supremacy, which is a system of mistreatment, out of business, and make no apologies or excuses or half-stepping in the process of doing so, and give the reasons. It's not constructive. It's not constructive for the people of this planet, this thing called racism. You know, yes, it produces all kind of material things. It's the most efficient system ever thought up in recorded history for handling things. But when it comes to people, it makes a mess of people, white and non-white.
All righty. Okay, we got about 12 minutes and 5 things to do, so that means we're short on time. But let's go quickly to Darnell, looks like from Phoenix. Go ahead with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. In regards to the attempted coup in D.C., after, the president, Joe Biden, in his speeches, and a lot of people are kind of regurgitating the same thing of unity and we got to come together and unite, this, that, and the third. So my question, Mr. Fuller, is why do white people think that black people want to unite with white supremacy?
Oh, but well, they don't call that. That's what they call unity, because they use words to just make stronger the system of white supremacy. The white supremacists don't do anything unless they burn midnight oil to figure out how is this going to make white supremacy stronger and keep it around longer than any other system ever thought up in the minds of people, including that system that's never been seriously tried, that people like Neely Fuller and Martin Luther King and all the other people that's run around here talking about justice. No, that's been talked about, but let's keep it in the talking stage. Let's never seriously try it, because we got a good thing going, this thing called white supremacy, and everybody bows down to it who has color. And white people are born into it, so they just get, they got a leg up right from the beginning, because the system is designed to give fun and glory and material comfort primarily to white people, and by whatever means necessary, meaning lots of bloodshed, lots of people doing all kinds of things that shouldn't be done. And so that's what they want, and they want to continue that. But a code is supposed to counteract that. Now, wait a minute. I'm doing something here that I have to watch myself. Am I answering your question?
He's on the mute there, Mr. Fuller. So, but okay, I think you did. We have another caller on the line, though.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All righty. I hope he answered your question there, Darnell. We got you on the mute there. Okay, let's go to Los Angeles. Oops. Let's go to Los Angeles. Swa, you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead with your question quickly.
I have a VGQ.
I can't do the VGQ now because we're short on time, Swa.
Oh, that's fine. Go to the next person. That's fine. I'll call next week.
Okay, you called. Okay. All righty. Thank you, Swa. Appreciate that, bro. Appreciate that so much. I'm gonna put you on the mute though. Let's see. Just listening in Dallas. What is it? 763. See if I can get you up here. Can't. Okay. Wait a minute. Oops, the technology. Okay. Got a person in the 763. I'm going to go ahead and try this. Go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller if you had a question. I didn't see that. Do you have a question for Mr. Fuller? No? Okay. All righty. We'll not do that then. Okay. All right, Mr. Fuller. Let's do this one here then. Okay. There we go. DeWitt says this, Mr. Fuller. The first one is, would a race war be constructive? And the second one is what is the best way to spread the code and getting non-white people to follow it? I was thinking of doing some kind of training to spread it, like the Black Panthers or the Nation of Islam.
Well, in answer to the second question, you can start with the use of the code book and just say, here's this guy named Neely Fuller, and so read this stuff here on page so-and-so, or just show them the book or tell them to get the book and see what they think. The first person, one of the first people that looked at the book when I wrote it, the original 1984 edition, I asked the person a question because all problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So I showed the book to someone. I think they kept it a little while and brought it back. And it's a person that worked with me on a job. And he says, you know what you got there, Fuller? And I said, what? Because I wanted his response. He said, you ain't got nothing there. Said, ain't nothing in that book to help me do nothing. Said, I don't even know why you took the time to write that. That ain't nothing but a bunch of mess. And I told my response was, that's exactly the way that the book is supposed to work. Because it is. That's the truth. The book is supposed to be a problem solver. And this person told me it was nothing in the book that would solve any problem in his mind that he had. That the race problem, I guess he didn't say it directly, the race problem is not a problem with him. So that's the way the book is supposed to work. And in answer to the caller's questions, you just lay it out there. You just tell the people, that this book exists, that this concept, even going, the concept is greater than the book. Compensatory code, that's much greater. That's a concept. That's why the concept is in the title, the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. It's a concept. It's not really something in reality. It's something that I'm trying to bring into reality, meaning black people should have a code. The white supremacists have a code. It's exact. They don't break the white code. They practice the white code. Mm-hmm. So that's what we need. Now, you just give it to black people, just tell them in whatever way, and in the things you say on the job and all like that, mostly for the process of questions and answers. So they don't, you don't get people in opposition to what you're doing. You can't talk to people if they're opposed to what you're doing and you haven't even started talking yet. No, you don't want to shut it down. So it's a scientific, codified way of even talking to people. And one is just presented like I did to the person who was going to read the book. And he read it, and he said it didn't mean nothing to him. And that's the way it's supposed to work. It'll mean something to him when he needs it. People act according to their wants and needs. Mm-hmm. Let them.
Okay.
Don't interfere with that.
All right, we got 6 minutes and 3 things to do. Let's see here. We'll probably do 2 of them. Mr. Fuller, let's do this. This comes from a person that does not want their name mentioned. It's about family relations. It says, hi, Mr. Fuller. Your work has helped my understanding of life circumstances. I am forever grateful for your efforts to produce justice on planet Earth. The more I study the system of racism, the more of a loner I become due to not sharing worldviews with my family and peers. Mr. Fuller, what should I do? Thank you.
The first thing you have to understand, anytime you start thinking differently in any situation about anything, the first thing you might notice is how lonely you get. That's always been. That's got to be understood. Every inventor knows that. If they didn't know it when they started doing their inventions, they learn it in the process, because every inventor, everybody who wants to change anything, Martin Luther King, Sojourner Truth, on and on and on, Bill Gates, it doesn't make any difference what color you are, gender, old, young. Anytime you step out of the line that everybody else is jumping in, and you start talking differently or acting differently, that's going to stand out. And you're going to become alienated. You already know that, or you should. And that's what the code is for, to let you know. Being alone. Being alone. Most of the movies that I recommend are about people who say, I'm not doing what everybody else is doing just because everybody else is doing it. I'm going to do something different. Not just to be different, but what I'm going to do, the different thing that I'm going to do is going to be an improvement over what I'm looking at. And that should be your goal. Otherwise, you shouldn't be doing it anyway if it's not going to be an improvement. So in answer to the question, so that you don't get frustrated. See, loneliness will bring about frustration. If you don't know in advance, you're going to be alone. That goes with the territory. And I understand many inventors, when I read about inventors, they were alone. There's even a song, I think, sung by Frank Sinatra and a whole host of other people. They all laughed at Fulton and the Steamboat. They all laughed at Hershey and the Chocolate Bar. Okay? That's how people are. They all laughed at Hershey and the Chocolate Bar. That's how people are. Until the chocolate bar gets out there on the shelves, and the next thing you know, the people who are laughing about it are going around eating a whole lot of chocolate bars. All inventors know that. The people that invented the airplane. Yeah, the people stood over on the other side of the fence. All them crazy people over there talking about, birds fly. That's why they were born with wings. People wasn't born with wings. If people were supposed to be flying, they'd had wings. That dummy over there is trying to put some wings on people. Oh, boy, is he crazy. That's a real nut. Well, they said the same thing about people that came up with the idea of a computer. So I've heard. All of the people who were pioneering that computer, the names that you hear associated with it, Steve Jobs, I believe, and Mr. Bill Gates, people laughed and say, get away from me. You talking about some stuff you came up with in your garage. You work in a garage. And you talking about some idea you have and you're in a garage. I mean, you're stupid. Get away from me. I understand that this is what they were told. So they went back to their garages. And when they came out, they astounded the world.
I hate to do this, Mr. Fuller, but I'm going to have to cut you off because we have
yes,
about
sir.
49 seconds. So listen, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Sorry about the interruption, but I had to do it. We're running out of time. We'll try to do better next week. Don't forget to go to producejustice.com for all the books and information that you need for this program. Mr. Fuller, you got 30 seconds. Go ahead with the last word.
Yes, well, just go to producejustice.com and try to get the book. That will be a start. And just tell other people, take a look at it, see what they have to say, and don't object to what they have to say.
All right.
Just move on to the next.
All right, thank you for listening, everybody. Thank you. We will try to do better, or I will try to do better next week. Thank you for listening, everybody, and have a blessed week.
Same from me.